Okay, the root of so many problems with freedom and slavery, anarcho-capitalism and dictatorships, religion and non-religion have to do with the rudiments of being human and rudiments of being a human that can write and speak language. Now, if we take a look at the elements of our language, we find that they can be broken down into smaller bits where we have a main word and then we have affixments attached to it. Okay, now this is done graphically and it's also done phonically. So the graphic senses are done are what we call graphemes, and the phonic senses are what we call phonemes. And this is important, especially when we want to talk about contexts inside of other contexts, context-free words, context-free elements of words, and where the introduction of meta language, what it means to have logic, so to speak, reason, and then the variance away from that. So we have an X, and the X is static. This is a grapheme. And when we shake it, we put it in verb form. And if you look at it, it almost looks like it could be two X's, which we could sum with a static symbol like that. Because we tend to look at things from left to right, we could just put in that, X, 2X, right? Now, that's important because it's different than the static symbol X to X, X equals X, because in one case, X could be said to be a duplication, an identification of itself, and in the other case, it could just be said to be the same thing moving, kind of like an electrical current moves from one point to another, and that is gauged on a base 2, it's either there or it isn't system within these time variables. Now, how do we take a basic logic of natural grammar? X equals X, X moves, or A equals A moves to A, and call this natural grammar? Well, we introduce what we call a generative grammar. And so we say that this first top is natural grammar, and then we're going to generate a grammar which points back and looks at grammar itself. And to do this, we need to generate a grammar that lies outside of the rules of grammar, or an invariant grammar. So we'll say that this top grammar is n, and this second grammar is a lowercase n. So we have two n's, two grammars, one that describes the natural grammar. Okay, so when we have A, B, and C, are all part of the natural grammar. We speak of them. We have B, C, and A, which is just a mixing them up, right? And then we have B to A to C. Okay, now all of these are to be said to be contextual grammars. These grammars are all, because they have a beginning point, a starting point, and an ending point, we'll say that they are we'll say that they're non-terminable, meaning that their contexts go on and on and on as long as we string these together, these equivalences and these points. Okay, so how do we get out of that? How do we generate a grammar that is non-variant or context-free? Well, for starters, we develop a case, X case for all non-terminable grammars, which points to this new symbol, which is towards terminal grammars. Now, for pointing to both sides of it, we'll just add one on this side pointing back to it, and this symbol is a symbol of all classes of cases of invariant context-free elements. Now, why is this important, or how do we generate this? Well, we find that this is the case for all new grammars, all generative grammars, and that this, then the absence of a non-terminal grammar that points to this grammar is part of the new grammar as well. But this element where we have an empty set of non-terminables pointing to this other variant is also very important to note. And so we have B, C, and A, B, A to C, then we have A to lowercase a, and then we posit this non-variant context-free element into these contextual non-terminable elements where it's outside of context. Now, how do we demonstrate that? Well, we take B, C, and A as a two-dimensional graphic, right? A two-dimensional writing. And we basically make a 3D element out of it. So now it is like that, right? So now we have a class of cases, and this is where the Wittgenstein statement of for a large class of cases, although not for all, where we employ the meaning of a word, we find the meaning of the word in the context of the language. Okay? So as this element moves in and out of sight, becomes abrogated, and the language becomes three-dimensional, then we are drawn into new discussions. Now, inevitably, we are going to run into a problem when the elements are 3D, and so all those elements reduce to this new meta element, because then we have X here, and then if we, instead of shaking that singular X, we now have another X, a non-variant X in the background, okay? So a non-variant X and X can be mistaken for X equals X. Okay, this is very, very important, and it can be AC/DC, it can go this way, it can go that way. All we have to do is take the three-dimensional aspect and drop in another non-variant invariant symbol right here, right? Now this is what we call generative grammar, and this brings up the question of recursion. Well, the context of my discussing this shows that there's a context to this non-context invariant discussion of language, and this is important to bring up to discuss further things in philosophy, and this is because this can lead now to where that three-dimensional X, we can have an X, we can have other X's, we can look at the very scratch that makes up an element to the alphabet, which makes up a metaphene, and this can be brought down into this, you know. We have X, the sound X, we have one line, we have another line, we flip them on themselves, we have four lines, we flip them on themselves, we flip them on themselves, we pull them apart, we generate we add a new line, and we just continue on with the supposed confusion until we get to, kind of like this. AC is the shaking, DC is the convention of the read. It's the fact that we read from left to right and not in the plowman's way, the old way, back right to left. But this is all important because this brings up the masculinity, the two-dimensional graphics, and the inflated now three-dimensional discussion of language, or the feminine aspect of language. Okay? And all of this is important because, we'll cut off there.